I'm a participant of ALLATRA and Creative Society project. Both these initiatives are addressing climate crisis. But few people know that for almost 10 years we've been facing persecution and harassment, despite any freedom of speech, any democracy, any human rights. But today I'm gonna expose who is doing that and why. Honestly, we don't like to waste time on this topic because we have real problems. Since the beginning of ALLATRA, we've been focused on preventing climate collapse and informing people about the climate threat, explaining what's really happening with the planet and what we can do as humanity. Our volunteers selflessly, without weekends, without holidays, are gathering information about what's happening around the world with climate and informing people. They're talking on radios, they're going to TV, they're contacting scientists, journalists, and just speaking to ordinary people about that. But we are being constantly distracted from our mission by so-called anti-cultists. It started in Russia, but now those who started those persecution in Russia have spread their influence all over the world. In Europe, they use corrupt journalists to create smear publications against us, to call us pro-Putin and pro-Russian cult. And funny thing, in Russia in 2023, ALLATRA was banned, declared an undesirable organization, and labeled a pro-Ukrainian totalitarian cult. Following this, special forces started raiding homes of our participants, forcing them face down, conducting searches and seizing their equipment and personal belongings. And this is still happening up till now with already former participants of the movement. And in Europe, our participants are losing jobs and facing a lot of discrimination. Personally, a few friends of mine stopped talking to me after they read those smear articles. And my mom, in tears, begged me to leave this totalitarian cult after watching some video on the TV. So let me tell you what the anti-cult is. It's a network of organizations created around the world supposedly to combat dangerous cults. But in reality, they use this cover for their criminal activities. The label cult is used to stigmatize and persecute selected organizations, religious movements, minorities, companies, and even entire countries. Yes, you heard me right, entire countries. Recently, a group of journalists revealed a documentary about their criminal activities, covered with all the facts that they are behind orchestrating the war in Ukraine, dehumanizing Ukrainian people through Russian media, labeling whole Ukraine as a cult.
Ukraine, the whole country, is just one new cult.
And now they've gone even further. Now their paid politicians are calling whole Europe a cult. Now stop for a moment and think about it. When you hear a word cult, what comes to your mind? Brainwashing, zombie-like people ready to do anything for their cult leader, devil worships, ritual orgies, maybe even suicides, right? Now realize that all these images have been implanted in your mind by anti-cultists. To legitimize their activity, they first had to create a demand for that. Use their media to infuse the term with fear. They instilled it in our mind that anything can become a cult. And the members of the cult are not humans anymore. They're like subhumans. They're animals. They're worse than thieves, than rapists. And you can do anything with them. Back to facts. The roots of anti-cult organizations are going to Russia. Their first organization was formed there, and it's called Ratsirs. The president of Ratsirs is Alexander Dworkin, a person with mental disorder. I'm not joking, it's official. And what's even more interesting, vice presidents of Ratsirs are archpriests of Russian Orthodox Church. Think about it, an organization created to research religious minorities is operated by Russian Orthodox Church. After Ratsirs, anti-cult organizations started popping up one after another in all Europe and even in the United States. Here it was called CAN, Cult Awareness Network. By the way, one of CAN's leaders was Stephen Hassan. This name might sound familiar for you. He had a very strong connection with Dworkin, and they participated in multiple conferences together. And the chapters of their published books are like identical twins, but in Russian and in English. CAN claimed its mission to find dangerous cults, but in reality, they were exploiting people and committing abuses. What did they do? They targeted specific organizations, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses. They would identify their members, and then they would find relatives of one of them, concerned relatives, who wouldn't approve a choice of their loved one to be Jehovah's Witness. And then CAN would come to those relatives and offer them to deprogram that member for some money. The relative would pay a huge amount of money for that member to come back home. But in reality, CAN would kidnap that member, hold him captive for weeks, subject him to physical and even sexual abuse, forcing him to renounce his faith. Thankfully, due to numerous lawsuits against Can, which they lost, they were shut down. But think about it, that their leader is still on a freedom and even presenting on a TV as a respectful speaker. In European countries, however, anti-cultists are acting absolutely openly. They have a vast number of official organizations. For example, in France, it's FACRIS and Miviludes, Spain, AIS, and so on. They are like octopus, but their tentacles are growing from rat's ears. Doubt it? Guess who are the vice president and the honorary member of the French FACRIS? Alexander Dworkin and Archpriest Novopashin. And now you start understanding. So what do all these organizations do? If you think that they're finding dangerous cults committing crimes against people, you are wrong. Same as Can, they target peaceful groups of people and persecute them. Among their victims are Jehovah's Witnesses, Evangelicals, Davidians, Falun Dafa, MV, Herbalife, and many others. Persecution occurs in 3 stages. First one is dehumanization through media. Second is discrimination. And then third one, persecution. I'll make a few examples. Falun Dafa, that's a spiritual movement emerged in China. Practitioners of Falun Dafa have faced and still face a true genocide. After passing through all 3 stages, they are now being mass arrested, taken to unknown locations, and their organs are being harvested without any anesthesia and then sold on the donor market in Europe. You might think China is not the best example because it's always been totalitarian. Okay, back to USA. The Branch Davidians, Veka, 1993. After a series of dehumanizing articles in the media, FBI went to their compound to rescue people and children whom the media claimed were being held there against their will, despite the pleas of people there that they've been there voluntarily and nothing bad was going on with them. After a 51-day siege, tanks and armored vehicles broke through the walls and burned everyone inside. 82 people, including 23 children. People they came to save were burned alive. And guess who was consulting special forces, brainwashing them, convincing them of danger posed by Branch Davidians? Can leader Rick Ross. And now Europe, Czech Republic and Slovakia, democratic countries. Over 240 defamatory articles against ALLATRA in the Creative Society were published them only over 2 last weeks, labeling our movement as a totalitarian cult, pro-Putin, pro-Russian, even comparing us to ISIS for speaking about climate. And this is happening despite the fact that no member of the Creative Society ever broke a law. Now our members are being fired from their jobs, their events are being cancelled, their publications are being blocked. And the most disturbing fact that anti-cultists started publishing lists of our members with their names, their addresses in social media, urging people to send in information about those who are still not in the list. You know what it means? They're trying to escalate us to the 3rd stage, persecution, where ordinary people believing this nonsense will start taking justice in their own hands against our members. Does it remind you anything? Just like Germans, after years of being brainwashed by Nazis, started beating and killing Jews. But it's important to understand that the genocide of cults is not the main goal of anti-cultists. The anti-cult agenda is merely a tool for playing political games. By labeling an organization as a cult, it is then used to destroy reputation of inconvenient politicians and parties. In the next videos, I will reveal more information. Also, how they program school shooters, how they're gonna incline a civil war in the United States. And most important, it's still not clear after this video, what awaits us if anti-cultism succeeds.